Too lazy to do a World War III update. Oh, somebody waking me up? Oh dear. Well, I guess I'll have to do the update then. Am I waking you up? Am I talking too loud? Am I disturbing you? That is a dirty, dirty, dirty look I just got there. I don't know why, I was just asking. I'm trying to be polite. Anyway, okay. I wonder why my animals always interrupt my videos. Yeah, it's like paybacking. Okay, World War III update. What's going on? What has the Russian response been to Turkey for shooting down the pilot? Now, let's recap of what happened now that everybody's pretty much filled in on the situation. An Su-24 was flying along. Now, Turkey has expanded its borders about 5 miles, so keep that in mind. So, refuted airspace of where Syrian territory is and where Turkish territory is in dispute, so this could be a part of it. The Turks are saying that the Su-24 reached its airspace for 17 seconds. They held them 10 times, and when they didn't respond whatsoever, they missiles away from an F-16, which would probably be an F-16C, which is the state-of-the-art, an excellent airplane to begin with, which an Su-24... would basically is a bomber. It's a strike bomber. You know, it's a medium size. Well, not even quite medium size. It's what you would call a light bomber. You know, for today's fighter bomber is kind of what it is. So it's not really going to have any. There's no way it's ever going to maneuver with an F-16. So that's the Turkish claim, and they said they shot it down after hailing it. Now, the Russian pilots, when they got shot down, 2 of them coming down in parachutes. Now, there's 2 videos out there. There's one parachute video where you see one guy in a red parachute, which I think is from a couple of weeks ago. And then there's another video that just came out with 2 pilots coming down in white parachutes. And, of course, the Durkas are on the ground going, Allahu Akbar, shooting at them with the AKs. One guy was killed before he hit the ground. The other guy, magically enough, even though... one rescue helicopter. I don't know what the fate of that crew is, but there was a helicopter. Maybe it was a rescue helicopter, but there was a helicopter sitting on the ground that got took out clearly by a U.S. TOW missile, and the pilot somehow was rescued by the Syrian army. So now the pilot says, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good to go." There's going to be payback, not so direct words, but yeah, somebody will pay, I think his exact words were, somebody's going to pay for the loss of my comrade. So, yeah. He said, again, this is the he said, she said kind of thing. He said they were flying along well inside the Syrian territory. He had flown there several times. He knew he didn't even need the navigation system. He knew the area so well. And he said he'd flown there several times. They didn't have their, I guess he didn't have his early warning system on. And he says that the missile hit unexpectedly at the rear. So he said they didn't have a chance to maneuver or nothing. So I guess that's going to change the protocols. They're going to, because they also fly with their transponders off, so it's harder to find out where these airplanes are going. But to an F-16, they're going to know where it's going. They're just not going to know what it is until they go. Now, there is a possibility that the Turks may have shot this down thinking it was a Syrian fighter. Because if its transponders off, you would know there's an aircraft there, but you would not be able to identify it. If the transponder's off, it doesn't tell you what's flying around. There's an object flying in the sky. Is it a balloon? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it an Su-24? Or a MiG-21? Or a MiG-23? A Syrian MiG-23? Perhaps they could have saw at that distance too. You wouldn't be able to distinguish if it was a MiG-23 or an Su-24. You would just say there's something streaking across the sky. So maybe the Turks shot it down thinking that. Who knows? We'll just, that's just speculation, but you get the idea. So the Russian pilot said they were on a regular bombing run. Area they've been. He said there was nobody hailed them, nobody said anything. It just banged. They got hit by the missile. And he says they didn't give us any warnings. He says they weren't flying parallel to us. They weren't changing their course. They weren't doing anything to kind of like shoo us away, so to speak. But we've also known in the past couple of weeks, there's been a few incidents where Russian airplanes have been chased away by Turkish airplanes. So no one's ever going to know. Again, the first casualty of war is always the truth. There's 3 sides to the truth. There's their side, your side, and then, of course, there's the truth, right? So we're never going to know who's telling the truth. So, and that doesn't really matter. That never matters. You don't focus on trying that anyway, because the incident is done now. What is the reaction to it? That's what these videos are about. What is the reaction going to be? Well, Russia is not going to respond openly to this. Remember, the bigger prize for them is to watch the U.S. economy collapse and NATO fall apart. They're going to sacrifice a few pilots to allow this to happen. In other words, they're going to turn the other cheek on a lot of things. Now, we do have Francois Hollande sitting down with Putin, trying to work out some deals on airstrikes and stuff like that. But we need to go back and talk about why Turkey what motive could they possibly have had to shoot down a Russian airplane? Well, if we really look at it, maybe two that we don't know for sure, but we do know that there is a claim that a MiG-29 was shot down a couple of weeks ago. But nobody's been able to verify that. There's another claim or footage that still doesn't fully prove that a Russian helicopter was down by some, Turkish fighters on the border with a U.S.-made TOW missile. There's video footage, but there's no 100% confirmation that, yeah, they took out a Hind 24. So this would be the third airplane that Russia has lost over there. But the way it sounds, according to the Russians, this is the first airplane they've lost there. So it's hard to say, right? Again, the Russians are probably not going to report the losses unless they have to, because again, the narrative is to make Russia look good, right? So there's going to be a lot. The game's dirty, right? But ISIS, okay, has been selling oil to Turkey and other countries such as UK and whatever, selling that oil to Turkey, and that's how they fund one way they fund the ISIS operation, right? So that's how they bankroll it. So in 2 years, the United States and other coalition forces have basically blown up about 150 oil tankers, trucks, right? Russia in the past couple of weeks has destroyed over 1,000, almost 1,100. So they're really hurting. It means the Islamic State has all this oil they can't move. So with that said, that's going to hit them. Russia's going after the financing, right? So Turkey has warned Russia a couple of times, don't do that. So this is why Putin was out there saying that they got stabbed in the back by Turkey, and that this is one of the state sponsors of terrorism, and they got stabbed back on him when they were supposed to be working together, not necessarily working together, but working within the frameworks of the U.S. agreement of airspace that the Russians and the Americans have worked out. So there's that. Again, it's all it's all BS on the we're going to follow our guidelines, you follow your guidelines. Nobody's following guidelines there if you haven't figured it out. Now the claim is that 80% of the targets that Russia is hitting is basically Free Syrian Army and not Islamic State. But that means 20% of the targets they are hitting is Islamic State. But we have to look at where the Free Syrian Army is. I mean, Putin isn't really hiding that he's backing Assad. I mean, that's his ally. He's going to back them. ISIS is Turkey's ally to overthrow Assad, so they're backing them. Same with Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States, and a few other countries, right? So the King of Jordan was sitting down with Putin, kind of reassuring their alliance with Russia, stuff like that. So I think Jordan is kind of on the fence. Hollande is definitely on the fence. I think he has to tread carefully with this meeting with Putin. And so far in the past couple of years, the only person that I see that runs to Putin to kind of calm things is Francois Hollande. I'm not saying he's a good guy yet, but he might actually do the right thing in the long run and be the reason. France will probably be the main pillar to fall to break up NATO. I'm making that statement now. We'll have to wait and see what happens. It's not going to happen overnight. But when it comes to push comes to shove, I think France will be the one. Just judging by Hollande's actions, not what they say, but what they do. Hollande looks nervous. He looks nervous. He doesn't want a war in Europe, which is kind of good. We should be backing him if that's the way he's going. I still don't trust him. He can't trust any of them yet. It's mobsters making deals with mobsters. This is really at the end of the day. And the thing is, getting back to the 80% of the airstrikes against the Free Syrian Army and other rebel groups versus the ISIS guys. Well, yeah, they are bombing close to where, in the areas where this Su-24 got shot down. That's not where Free Syrian Army is really. That's where ISIS is. The closer you get to the Turkish border, the closer you get to ISIS. They're working their way there. Now, that said, we do know the Free Syrian Army has been working with the Russians because the Americans won't. You hear double talk from the U.S. Congress daily, where on one side they say we need to work with the Russians. The Russians have got they've had it open since day one, saying, hey, come and work with us, and you share intelligence where us, we won't hit your guys. Basically to expose the terrorist organizations. This is why Putin is able to come out and say, yes, the West is financing terror. This is why he's able to say, he goes, I even know how much these people are getting paid. They're mercenaries. So he goes, we're hitting terrorists. If you show us where the moderate rebels are, but where the moderate rebels are is the terrorists. So the U.S. they can't call Putin's bluff on that, because that's what Putin is doing. He's calling their bluff. And same with Turkey and everybody else. So they're doing that while they're hitting these oil trucks as one example. And really, that's really going to hurt the financing of ISIS. The next thing that's going to happen, okay, you have to keep in mind, and this is really pissing off U.S. pilots, is that they're dropping flyers to these oil transport truck drivers to get out of the trucks if they see airplanes, because they don't want to kill the proxy army to overthrow Assad. That's what this is all about. It's not about women and children. It's not about democracy. It's about getting rid of Assad. Why? Because Israel cannot strike Iran. They can't go to war with Iran until they get Syria out of the way, which I don't think is going to happen. The S-300 and S-400 missile systems in Iran are now getting, the missiles are on delivery. They're showing up. Russia's response, S-400 missile system to Syria. I said they would be doing this at some point. They will probably do this to Lebanon as well. They're gonna arm everybody in the region. That's because if they can get the Lebanese troops to shoot down Israeli airplanes, again, it still stays proxy war. Right now, these are the opening shots of World War III. This might go on tit for tat for a long time. I think Putin, again, he's a cooler head. He's calculated. He's not going to hit the button until they're losing. Like if it's like, okay, Russia, 10 miles to Stalingrad or 10 miles to Moscow, that type, road to Moscow, and you've got Abrams tanks and Leopard tanks closing in. That's when they launch. Mind you, that's going to be a long way away. I don't think anybody's going to be able to invade Russia successfully. Not in this day and age. Not without half the planet getting killed in the process. And when Napoleon invaded Russia, they burnt down Moscow as a kind of an FU. If we can't have it, nobody can. So you get the idea of what mentality we may be looking at here. Now, with that said, the U.S. pilots, again, just to recap, Navy pilots and I guess the neighboring Air Force pilots that are staying flying from Turkey and stuff like that. These guys sit on the tarmac or the carrier deck, waiting for instructions to take off. They get the instructions, but they sit there idling until they run out of fuel, which is number one, is more expensive. And when they get refueled and they send up and go, they can't. There's nobody there to hit when they get there. So they're bombing empty buildings and stuff like that. This is a complaint of the U.S. pilots. Now, this information comes from Joe Skousen, so you take that. Now, the other thing, too, is Joe Skousen was also saying something interesting about the Turkish pilots. He says, yes, they have the state-of-the-art F-16Cs, which is, F-16C is a phenomenal airplane. F-22 is a good airplane. The F-16C is a phenomenal airplane. There's a lot of things that the F-22 is better at, sure. It's got more power and stuff like that. But if you want a practical man's airplane for every 1 hour flown, 3 to 4 hours of maintenance, it's an F-16C. You want something that's going to frickin' turn. By the time you think, okay, I'm going to do a turn, you've already turned 3 times. Something that can turn in a full combat radius turn in 15 seconds, that's the F-16C. It's a fucking awesome airplane. I've seen them fly. They're powerful. They might not be a twin engine, but if you want maneuverability out of the U.S. Air Force, you're going to be flying an F-16C. F-15s and F-16s, I think, is the best that they have. F-22, maybe in another area, but even against an F-22, I'd take an F-16C. That's how much faith I have in that airplane. I just think it's a phenomenal airplane. However, that said, one of the things Joe Skousen was saying, now mind you, he kind of says this about everybody else but the U.S. Air Force, is that the Turkish pilots aren't as well trained as the Russian pilots, that they're really not that good. But for an F-16 to shoot down an Su-24 unsuspectingly is kind of not that hard, right? That said, an Su-24, well, no matter how good the pilot is, it's not going to turn with an F-16C. But we're talking missile war, so maneuverability is second. It's more of who can lock onto who can jam whose missile. But without countermeasures or anything turned on, you launch a missile. I mean, NAM 9's coming at you at Mach 3. Maybe a little faster, maybe a little slower. Doesn't give you much time to respond, and if you don't have your early warning system on, that will drop chaffs and flares on you and let you know that you got to start maneuvering around, because an Su-24 can outmaneuver some stuff. It has to know what's coming, right? So the thing is that tells you that these pilots were pretty close, and they took the shot. Were they close enough to identify the airplane? That's the question. And if they were, they would know that, okay, well, the Syrians aren't flying Su-24s, the Russians are. If it was a MiG-23, yeah, you'd say it was most likely going to be Syrian, because the Russians aren't flying those anymore. Or MiG-21, they're not flying those anymore. A frogfoot, it could be either, right? Because the Russians still use the frogfoot quite widely. So do the Syrians. So we're never going to know exactly what's going to happen there. But it looks like Obama, once again, is given the order to, warn the ISIS fighters before the airstrikes come in, or their rebel groups, to protect, again, they're protecting ISIS. And there was a journalist from, I believe, Germany, don't quote me, maybe Denmark, Germany, whatever. He was on RT about a month or so ago, talking about how he worked out a deal. It took like 6 months for him to do this with the Islamic State, to come and be the man on the ground, and he didn't know if they were going to kill him or not, but he went. And he went there, and they pretty much, again, you ask the jihadists, they don't sugarcoat it. They're like, hey, we're getting funding. Here's how it works. United States gives money to the CIA to give it to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia then takes the money, buys the weapons, just like Joe Biden said, sends the weapons directly into Libya. From Libya, they ship the weapons into the Free Syrian Army. From the Free Syrian Army, they basically get all their Western ammo and rifles and whatever. The Free Syrian Army just hands them over to ISIS. This has been the game the whole time. That's how they're getting armed. Saudi Arabia, same thing. They take the U.S.-made TOW missiles. They drop them off somewhere in Syria if they can. Or they just, again, here, you're the supply. You give it to the Free Syrian Army because that's the supply route to ISIS. So when you got these, I can't imagine how the U.S. military really truly feels, especially the ones that know. Why would they even follow these orders to be giving these terrorists? Again, your paycheck is not worth that. It's what this is going to cost us in the end is a thermonuclear war. And it's time to step up and do the right thing. Quit, do whatever. Whatever you do, blow the whistle. Let them know, no, we're supporting terrorists and we shouldn't be supporting terrorists. I got to get the fire going. It's so freaking damp in here. I did light it, but it didn't take. But anyway, yeah, so that's going on. Now, apparently there's a bit of a blackout in Turkey. There was an explosion in Turkey last night from the making of this video. Apparently it wasn't an attack. It was some sort of a chemical dry ice factory or something like that blew up. Ammonia, I guess it must have been ammonia or something like that. I don't know what it was. Scared the shit out of everybody in Istanbul, but it wasn't that. However, on the same night, there's been a Kurdish uprising as well in Turkey. I wonder how that happened. I wonder if they might have gotten any support from anybody. Who would possibly be supporting the Kurds in an uprising against Turkey? Again, the Russians are going to strike back. You kill one of their pilots, you're going to lose 2,000 people. They're not going to let this go. But they're not going to hit you. They're going to sucker punch you. They're not going to hit you when you're expecting it. And the Kurds, look, even the U.S. has been arming the Kurds to a degree, right? Reluctantly, but they have been arming them to a degree. And Turkey doesn't like this for one major reason. They don't, and the Jordanian king said this, he goes, what we have to do is start defining the parameters, and this is what the U.S. hasn't done. The U.S. government, the British government, and I guess pretty much other governments haven't done, is define who is a terrorist and who is not. They can't do this, because if they do, the whole plan goes awry, right? Because you'll find out very quickly that almost everybody that's getting armed is a terrorist. And because of that, then it puts it's all BS. It's like, okay, we're just going to change the fine print so that we can't be legally responsible for, the chaos and trauma that people are suffering over there under the hands of the most maniac, genocidal people you could possibly imagine. But yeah, so they who's a terrorist and who's not. This is not defined yet. Now the Russians are defining. They're saying, well, the people that are fighting Assad are terrorists. They're part of the ISIS coalition. And you have everybody else say, no, 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 these are moderate rebels. So who's a moderate rebel, who's not? Obviously, Putin can prove, okay, well, the Al-Nusra is basically a form of Al-Qaeda and stuff like that. So all these other groups that are out there of the Free Syrian Army are made up of basically Al-Qaeda and what have you. So it's very easy for the Russians to show who is on the terrorist watch list already. Remember, the United States has removed Al-Qaeda from the terrorist watch list, right? They've done that. Instead, they put U.S. American patriots and Christians and stuff on there in the replacement. You can't even make that stuff up. That's the crazy part. You can't even make that stuff up. So that's kind of what's going on. So why did they do this? Because they have to. Legally, they have to. They can't be on the terrorist watch list. Now, the Turks, they consider the Kurds terrorists. So, again, it's like everybody there hates each other. It's pretty clear, they can't. Nobody can define who the terrorist is because everybody's calling the other guy a terrorist. So it's like it'll get to the point where if everybody's a terrorist, nobody can arm anybody, and that kind of screws the whole plan of overthrowing Assad, right? So that's why they can't do it. So Russia knows this, but it's becoming even open now in the mainstream media. Of people talking about who the rebel groups are. Yes, there is some Free Syrian Army left there, but the majority of them are now, ISIS that's there, right? And it's getting to the point where people know who's bankrolling who. To the point where it's just like, how can anybody go along with this? How can anybody go along with this? I'm starting to see now. My Facebook, I keep it, personal for my family and stuff like that, so I don't add too many people to that. But you can look at my my WW3 Facebook updates page, which is basically me just putting the video there. But other people do put links and stuff like that there too, so it's always worth a good place to go. And thank you guys a lot for the links that you guys send. So when we're looking at it like that, the strategy that Russia is going to deploy here is going to destabilize Turkey at some point. Now, officially, Putin has said we are not, and same with Lavrov. I listened to about a 40-minute thing with Lavrov. Basically, they said their relations with Turkey is not going to change, but however, the incident is they don't consider Turkey a hostile state yet. So there's going to be backlash. Just how they're going to get even in a very, very, very underhanded way for sure. Again, start arming the Kurds with tanks and Eagle missiles and so it's going to be just a nightmare, right? But that said, it is the warships. One of the Russian warships are going there, which is an air defense warship, massive size destroyer, air defense system. It's heading there right now. The S-400 missile systems, they're going into Syria. So that means Assad is now going to have, massive air cover. Considering that the S-400 can take on to 80 targets at once and hit something the size of a football, that tells you this is an escalation in big time. But it is and it isn't, because the S-300 missile systems that are already in the area can already cover Syria. This is just kind of more of a, we're going to send more, it's already there. And Iran, they've got theirs. It's already there. And Saudi Arabia, well, they got theirs. Which is kind of strange that they arm up everybody, right? The Russians can fight you and arm you at the same time. They're no different than the U.S. on that one. It's all about business, right? But yeah, when they get the S-400 missile system in there, this will be a threat to Israel for sure, because every time an Israeli airplane comes in to strike Assad's forces, they could get shot down. But I'm thinking when you see the stuff in Lebanon, that's when Israel's going to get their asses kicked, because I think the Russians would probably prefer it if the Lebanese do the fighting against the Israelis. Now, that said, Israel kind of has its hands full with all these uprisings and stabbings and shootings and stuff going on right now, which is the beginning of the civil war, in my opinion, in Israel. They've screwed themselves too much to, get away with it and get out of this scot-free. I think this is what kind of destroys Israel, is their Zionism. The Zionism is designed to create the next Holocaust for the Jews anyway. And
I think a lot of Jews are actually catching on to that. They've been thrown under the bus by their own government in the worst kind of way that it's going to, it's going to destroy Israel. There will not be this, one homeland for the Israelis. The way they're doing it, it's just going to, they're going to be too isolated. When the uprisings get there, it'll be too late for anybody to go and save them, because Israel's being such a small country. 45-minute invasion can wipe out this country for the most part, most of its infrastructure. 4 Su-24s make a high-speed dash through Israel. They can do a lot of damage. Cruise missiles, 24 cruise missiles from a Tu-160 can hit a lot of military installations in Israel, which would leave them virtually defenseless. As well as armed as Israel is, as many pilots as they got, as many F-15s as they got, F-16s they got, as good as they are, they're too small. They will not be able to stop that invasion. But I'm not saying they wouldn't put up a hell of a fight. I mean, you can't count the Israelis out. But we're not living in the '67 or the '73 war time period where things were a lot more analog. Right now, you got cruise missiles, that to take all the danger. You don't even have to fly the aircraft into Israel to take out the targets. And trust me, the Russians know exactly where to hit everything. They would probably hit their strike capabilities first. I'm sure there's stuff hidden all over the country. It's kind of like that all over the Middle East. They don't keep all their weapons in one place, right? They kind of hide them all over the desert, right? And the thing is that in itself, the Israelis are kind of prepared to deal with. But what they're not prepared to deal with is a civil uprising and just, people just shooting people random. It gets to the point where nobody's safe anywhere. And once it turns into a civil war, you can't hold ground in a populist uprising. It's just, all the military people will be basically living on the military base, which makes them, every military base you take out takes out their personnel, right? So it's going to be bad for them. But I mean, you reap what you sow. If they wanted, you got that Mossad general out there saying, yeah, there was 2 of them that were arrested, and the one guy's blowing the whistle saying, yeah, he says, he was upset because that ISIS was a Mossad creation, and these were his own words. So it's like, okay, well, it's not just Mossad; it's a whole bunch of them. Again, going back to 2004, the deal that was made for Israel, for the New World Order types told Israel, you strike Iran, and they said, no way, we can't do it with Syria in the way because they could be a counterattack to us and it'd wipe us off the map. They were mostly worried about the chemical weapons. You got to factor that in too. But there's another problem too, is that for them to strike Iran, I mean, Iran now is becoming way too powerful. There's no way Israel can strike Iran successfully. There's no way they can do it. As good as they are, the only way they can do it is if they strike Iran and the United States comes in and finishes the job, which that I think was the original plan, is to start the war and get the United States to come in for it. Now, what we're seeing right now over the incident that we're talking about with Turkey, and I saw a neat little kind of text meme. It was kind of funny how it does it. It says something like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, and the first texter was Turkey. We just accidentally shot down a Russian airplane. Then the second text was, oh boy, wait, get a hold of yourself from the U.S. Get a hold of yourself or whatever. Have some coffee, chill out a bit. And the next one was like, Russia, time to get rid of kebab. Next one was Turkey. Turkey. Oh man, chill out. Next one was Great Britain. Oh, and then Turkey again goes, NATO, you got my back, right? And NATO goes, yeah, we would, but yo. And Turkey goes, yo. Britain comes in, you're on your own. Germany comes in, R.I.P. It was really cleverly done how they did it, but you get the idea anyway. So yeah, you got to have gallows humor about these things, right? But we'll have to see what ramping up there is. I don't think you're going to see Su-24s flying to the border without a MiG-29 escort anymore. I do believe now the Russians are probably going to bring in some real air power. They're definitely going to have a defensive take on it. An Su-35 against some F-16Cs. In a turning fight, I'd still put my money on the F-16C, but it really comes down to the competency of the pilots, not the equipment used. But some MiG-29s in there, and there are MiG-29s in there. I don't think it will be the Syrian pilots flying alone. Maybe they will at first, but if you get some good Russian MiG-29 pilots in there, there won't be much of a fight. I'm not saying they won't lose any airplanes at all, but it's the level of pilot that they're going to bring in. And the difference, too, is now you have to understand, most of the Su-24s have been taking off with just bombs, no air-to-air defense system, like no RR-11s or RR-77s or whatever. They haven't been, flying around with air-to-air capabilities. They will now. Now, if this would have been an Su-24 with all transponders on, I think you would have lost 2 F-16s. Why? The jamming capabilities of the Su-24 is good, but the jamming capabilities of the Su-34 is even better. And of course, the Su-34 pilots, if you're flying one of those, you're flying one of the best that Russia has. Those pilots are trained to fight fighters. So it's a fighter bomber, sure, but it's a high capability fighter bomber. If they lose, say, a Tu-22M or a Tu-160 Blackjack shot down by Turkey, I think Turkey gets a dose of cruise missiles. They're going to lose something out of this big. I think it's going to be more likely arm the Kurds, let them create havoc in Turkey, and that will be payback enough for Russia because it'll kill more people. And it'll be more of a pain in the ass to Turkey to deal with the uprising than it would a military, because you just can't plan against the kind of like what's happening in Saudi Arabia, where Saudi Arabia is armed to the teeth with all these weapons, but they don't really know how to use them properly, and they're getting their asses kicked by the Houthis. Yes, they're killing a lot of the Houthis, but they're getting their asses handed to them. Abrams tanks, they're taking those things out like groundhogs, that type of thing. So there's also factions of ISIS that have the so-called Angel of Death. I don't know I can't even pronounce his name. You have the Rambo of Iraq, and you have the Angel of Death of ISIS. And this guy, he's one of those ISIS leaders, has declared war on Saudi Arabia. Now, we know that even though Saudi Arabia protects and arms the ISIS guys, that many of them are against. But you have to understand that when ISIS overthrows Assad, that's when they get rid of ISIS. They'll get rid of ISIS in 2 weeks. Number one, they'll cut off the funding. Number two, they'll just A-10 warthogs everywhere, actually hitting targets. And they just won't give them Obama won't be giving them the call to warn them to get out of the way ahead of time, like they've been doing. Because that's what's happened. This is what the U.S. pilots are complaining about. So a U.S. military coup in the States, if there's going to be a reason for it, this is going to be one of them, aiding and abetting terrorists. Now, that said, under international law, all these people that are involved, the bankers, the politicians, they all need to go to jail for like ever on this stuff. Somebody has to arrest these people for supporting terrorism. It's openly admitted now. You had Joe Biden again last week I think Joe Biden's doing something strange. I think he's trying to dissociate himself with the ISIS guys saying, well, we armed them, but we didn't do it on purpose. So what we did, and he start with him, he's pretty much giving you the plan. The next guy you can get, and he again openly admits everything, is McCain. These are our friends, ISIS is our friends, it's like, they're all moderate rebels. Yeah, every one of them, even the ones that eat hearts out of dead Syrian soldiers, even the ones that cut people's heads off, and pales them on a fence somewhere. Yeah, these are all my friends. John McCain is a complete utter nut job. The only person that I think is as nuts as him is Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, he's frothing at the mouth to get a war going with Russia. They just can't wait to get a war going with Russia. We got to shoot down Russians. Well, again, it's going to really backfire. The Russians aren't going to come at you where you expect it. And I can guarantee you, payback's going to be 10 times fold in a bitch. The Russians always 10 up. They don't 1 up everything. They 10 up everything. The S-400 missile systems, will they shoot anybody? I don't think they'll shoot anybody down with it. That's the whole thing. It's there for show. Because the warships they have in the area are more than capable of shooting down fighters. It's there for show. But what they're going to do is they're just going to destabilize your country. They'll destabilize Israel. They'll destabilize Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. Why do you think and of course Turkey? Why do you think the Jordanian king is starting to play nice with Israel or with Russia? Reassuring that we share your pain. We pray for your pilot. We're best friends. Remember, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Because they know at the end of the day the Russians are going to take Syria. They know it. Halan knows this. This is why what he's trying to do is make sure. What Halan is doing is saying, if World War III starts, we don't want to have anything to do with it. He's already told this to Putin. He told this to Putin a couple of years ago. Flash meeting in Moscow airport between Francois Hollande and Putin. conversation rumored to go like, if there's a false flag attack on Russia, we have nothing to do with it. So again, Hollande, I think, is kind of jumping ship, but he's still spineless in a lot of ways. But a spineless man doing at least trying to do the right thing is better than nothing, right? So yeah, that's what's kind of going on there. Now that said, would they take us to war, before Christmas? I don't know. NATO had the flash meeting on how to deal with Turkey. Yes, they've come out and they've said, yes, they still support their ally, what have you, and they're still blaming Russia, whatever. Okay, fine. And calling Russia reckless and everything like that. The usual rhetoric, okay, and they have to stick with that. They can't change from that propaganda. They're not allowed to. The other thing that's interesting is the economies, okay, are doing poorly. They are doing very poorly. Yes, there's areas of the economies that are doing great. People still have jobs in a lot of countries, and where's bad, where's not. But the overall, again, here in Canada, 450 people from Maple Leafs meets getting laid off. Thousands in the oil patch in Alberta. Meanwhile, a massive carbon tax is coming in. It's going to lead to a lot of unemployed people very angry. And they will be holding their government accountable. This is what the bankers don't want. They don't want to be blamed for it. No collapse until war comes. That's what I've said, and that's what I stick by. But would they take us to war before Christmas? Well, if we're talking in a place like Canada or even Europe, to go to war at the beginning of a winter would be a godsend for the bankers because people will die. They'll be so concentrated on freezing and starving, they won't even think about the bankers that put them there in this place in the first place. But watch what the politicians are doing. Who's taking off for vacation and not coming back? Who's mysteriously dying of suicides and stuff. Now, watch for stuff like that. It's going to start happening because it already is. It's not full ramped up yet, but the knockoff is coming. And as we see that ramp up, we know we're getting closer to. I'm not saying war is going to break out before Christmas, but incidents like this is definitely a big freaking escalation. This is a huge escalation. It's it's going to have to be a little more, believe it or not, a little more direct than this for it to kick off. The Russians, again, they're big prizes. They're going to take losses. They'll take lots of losses if they know that this is going to slow. What they're doing and what the Chinese are doing is the simplest thing ever. Wait for the U.S. economy to collapse. Let it implode in on itself. So they don't have to go to war. They can technically win without technically firing a proverbial shot. That's always been the game. Between the Russians and the Chinese is how do you take out the United States without going to war with them? Because, again, the losses just be too great on their side, right? So this is the game they're playing. And all they have to do to kind of win this is tell the truth. Look, you watch social media, you watch anything. The approval rating for Russia is going up. And it is propaganda, don't get me wrong. Like, the Russians aren't in there for the women and children. They're not even really in there for Assad. They're in there for their own reasons. Main reason, yes, if they get rid of ISIS and can stabilize Syria again, that's just a benefit. They can then get the oil refined. They can do this. They can help their ally Iran. But the more secure Iran is, the less likely Israel is to strike it. The less likely Israel is to strike Iran and go to war with Iran, because we have to go to war with Iran even though they haven't attacked anybody in 200 years, because they're the number one supporters of state terrorism, which is the claim. But never mind Saudi Arabia arming ISIS and Turkey arming ISIS and Israel treating ISIS fighters in their hospitals and Al-Nusra and all those guys. Because as soon as they cross the border, they're moderates, right? So all this stuff, again, out there in the open, you just got to track it down. Because the Chinese and the Russians know right after Iran falls, they're next, and they don't want that. So the Chinese are kind of still playing a strange, because they do have a lot of investments in Saudi Arabia, so they are kind of helping to back off on the Houthis as well. So it's kind of a strange, there's going to be crosses and double crosses all over the place, right? Every country's in there for their interests, not for the women and children and all that BS and democracy that you always keep hearing about. But it's never about that. It's about, golden rule. He who has the golden rules. You own the resources, you own the currency denomination. Which the funny thing about all this is that money has no value. It's just what people perceive it to have value. If you perceive it has purchasing value, then you use it. Now, remember, we had Goldman Sachs come out there this week and say, hey, it's time for 2016, you're better to ditch the U.S. dollar and start buying Russian rubles. It's coming from Goldman Sachs. Now, those sneaky bastards, they just want to get in on the other side. They don't care whose currency they control. Rothschilds don't care whose currency they control. They just want to control it. So if they control the won, renminbi, and the ruble, then they're okay with that. They don't care who suffers. They don't care who dies. They know that the Anglo-American Empire is dying, and it's dying because of its fraudulent. Now, I'm not saying the Chinese are going to be any better. They're just as fraudulent in a lot. Their economy. Oh, it's the best economy in the world. Best economy in the world. The week after, oh my God, they're collapsing. Next one, oh, this best economy in the world. Best. Oh, they're collapsing. It's back and forth like that in China all the time. And just watch the mainstream media. You can see it's like watching a thing of ping pong. It's like good, bad, economy good, bad, good. It's just crazy over there. So their system is going to suffer the same fate as this system. It's just theirs is in the infancy of being created into a world currency that hasn't been propped up to the point of ridiculousness yet, to the point where it's about to collapse. Now that said, remember, it took 200 years to get up to the first $2 trillion or $4 trillion, in the United States. It's only taken Obama 2 terms to bring it up to 19 trillion. So 200 years to get that much debt in the United States, and then from George Bush right through to Obama, an unbelievable quantum leap of debt. So what they're doing is they're wrapping this up. The bigger the crash, the bigger the bankers are going to win on the other side. They know this. That's what happened in 2008, because they know they're going to get a bailout. So the more they're going to get bailed out for, because we haven't put a single banker in jail. Even Iceland, Iceland put a handful of bankers in jail, 26. It's better than nothing. And between 2 and 5 years, they should have gotten life in prison. I mean, real life imprisonment for the rest of their natural life. Most of them deserve a firing squad. But I think in this collapse, because people will be so enraged that a banker is going to get you killed. If you say you're a banker, you're going to get killed. It's not the man on the street. Look, the man on the street is out there protesting Black Lives Matter. The man on the street out there is protesting for, little things that don't really mean anything in the grander scheme of things. They're out there, gun control. Yeah, they're not going to do gun control. They're just going to give the illusion in the States that they're going to take away your guns, so you keep protesting, so you're not paying attention to the bankers. It's a distraction. So keep them discontent with something, but it's a divide and conquer tactic. All the race baiting and all that stuff. That's divide and conquer, because they know people go to the streets for that. They're not going to the streets to take care. A real issue, which is basically what keeps people poor, is the bankers. They're the ones that are ruining everything. They're ruining humanity. So that's what we need to take care of. But it only happens once you get brave law enforcement, military actually stand up against these thugs. Just because it's law doesn't mean it's moral. And constitutions say if the law is unjust, you have the duty to challenge it for sure. And we're not challenging these things. That's the problem. We should be challenging these laws. But when you get all these student protests that are basically on bullshit causes, if people were as passionate about the bullshit causes as they are about the things that are actually going to affect your future and humanity, in a thermonuclear war, we'd be much better off. I mean, we should be protesting getting rid of nukes from Moscow to Beijing to Washington, from London, anywhere. So anyway, that's just my take on things. We'll have to see what the Russians are going to do. There's a lot of stuff that's come out in the last past 24 hours. We'll have to keep an eye on Turkey. I'm sure they're nervous right now. But you have to understand that Aragon bastard, he wanted to start a false flag just so he could have the right to go and attack Syria too. Again, these are the crazies that are running the asylum, right? So this guy is willing to get NATO into World War III, which will test the resolve of NATO. Are we going to go to World War III because Turkey decided to start World War III? I don't know. Maybe we will. Considering the blowhards in Washington, they want a war anyway. This would be to their benefit. The bankers want the war. Get Turkey. Oh, well, Turkey attacked them first, but Article 5, we got to go and defend Turkey. I say screw that. You start the war. Same with Israel. You start the war, you fight the war. That's my take on it. Somebody attacks you, okay, maybe Article 5 will defend you. But if they don't attack you first, and the Russians aren't going to attack first, they're waiting for, that's the goal. The Russians know that the U.S. wants Russia or China to attack them first. They know this. This is why they're taking these slaps in the face, because they know that sitting and wait, anything that happens, they sit and wait. The U.S. economy fails. The Rothschild system is destroyed because people will be demanding blood. They know this. So for them, they're going to take an awful lot before they really, increase. It doesn't mean they're not going to get payback, because they still have to, they still have to save face amongst their people. And right now in Russia, again, Putin enjoying, even if a half of it was a lie, he's enjoying a 90% approval rating, somewhere around that. Even if you cut that in half, that's still higher than any other politician on the planet. Even if you cut that in a quarter, that's still probably better than the average. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's enjoying some pretty good PR over there in Russia. So he has the people on his side. But more importantly, globally, he has people on his side. Most people, they just see him as the strong man, and it is becoming so obvious that, well, it's not obvious, it's just stated as fact on mainstream media, talking about how we keep arming ISIS, how we created ISIS. You have general after general, like, these are people with credentials. Petraeus admitting it. I mean, this is the general of the United States, in the United States, that is, looking after the armed forces. He's even said it. Now, they try to spin it, and this is where people are calling the bullshit. Is like, you can try to spin it, but we know once you've admitted that you created ISIS and you're still doing the same plan, or trying to double down on the plan of arming moderate rebels, well, they've lost the people. They can't save face on this one. That it's more important for Obama to overthrow Assad than get rid of ISIS. That conversation is going around the world right now. Now, Obama, he's the puppet in all this. Trust me, it's a Soros, Brzezinski, Kissinger. You had Kissinger out there about a week or so ago, talking again how we're going to go to war with Russia and China, for the new world order. I hate that guy. And then, of course, Soros. I mean, George Soros is the biggest scumbag on the planet. Funding all this stuff. And the thing is these names are starting to get out there. So their days are numbered if they keep doing this, because nobody's untouchable. Because it's not the guy on the street that's going to get them. It's the guy that they rip off $100,000 from, or $200,000, or whatever, in the next banker collapse. When that happens, you're going to see bankers hanging from the street lamps. The average person taking to the street rioting, well, that's what the riot cops are for. That's what the UN is going to be coming into the United States and Canada and all those places for. Because people don't know who to direct their anger at. But the people who do know, which is there's way too many people woke up now, that when rule of law is gone, and this is why I always make the plea to law enforcement and military now, do it while it's easy. Arrest the people while it's easy. Arrest the politicians while it's easy. Get all the, start with Joe Biden, work your way down. Obama, Clintons, Bushes, Obamas, get them all. Point out, we have to get, because the mainstream media is not going to do the job for us, because they're all in on it, because they're owned by the very same banks that are ruining the system, right? So this is why you never hear criticism of certain people. But you also have to factor in that at some point, there's just too many people posting stuff like on Facebook and stuff like that are, people are reading the headlines. It's like, okay, I'm starting to see my friends starting to post the stuff that I, started posting before. Now, I started posting it, like my World War III stuff like that, on my Facebook and all that. And again, I only keep that for the family, because, I post my stuff, but I got to be careful about my family members and stuff like that being associated to all that stuff, because they might not want to necessarily. And I don't like to force that stuff on people. If they want to have the conversation, I'll have the conversation, because it's a scary one, right? We're talking about thermonuclear destruction. It's a scary conversation. But I'm starting to see more of my friends point out little things, because they're still worried about things like racist bigot. They're still worried about things like conspiracy theory or anti-Semite, calling out Zionism. They're still scared about that. But once that conversation starts, it's like, we call bullshit. Then what do you do? There's no counter that they can go for that. Then it's about, okay, let's get some brave prosecutors. One charge, crimes against humanity. You can use the NDAA to round these people up, indefinite detention. George Soros, Kissinger, Brzezinski, if they're in the country, get them. Obama, you can get him under his own NDAA. There's no man above the law. These are just men and women. They're just people. Arrest them already. They're doing evil. They've openly supported. Get these CIA goonbags that are going along. These are the guys that are in the know. They know exactly who they're arming. You get them. You prosecute them. You hold them without any phone calls under the NDAA, because you can do this. And you put them in Guantanamo Bay. If you have to waterboard them. Get whatever information you need. Bring the whole system down. It just takes one brave. The agent that spearheads this, the lawyer that spearheads this, goes down in history as the savior of humanity against the greatest evil ever. Don't you want that? Let your ego even do the right thing. You know, I mean, we live in a narcissistic world. At least get it done. Crimes against humanity, weapons of mass destruction, 1.5 million people dead as a result in a lie, and several thousands of soldiers as a result in a lie. The whole administration, get them. Hold them until you can pursue. Hold them until you get the evidence. That's what they're doing to everybody else. You trust me. If you want to get rid of the NDAA, that's how you do it. Is use it against the politicians. Look at Feinstein. When she was out there talking about we need to spy on people, and then went, oh well, they're spying on me. Well, no, that's all right. Now I'm against it. That's how these spineless bastards are. Merkel was the same thing, right? But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So definitely living in interesting times. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing. And have yourselves a great day, eh?
Good day, eh? Hi, my name is Missy, and I'm too lazy to do a World War III update. Oh, somebody waking me up? Oh dear. Well, I guess I'll have to do the update then. Am I waking you up? Am I talking too loud? Am I disturbing you? That is a dirty, dirty, dirty look I just got there. I don't know. I was just asking. I'm trying to be polite. Anyway, okay. I wonder why my animals always interrupt my videos. Yeah, it's like payback. So, okay, World War III update. What's going on? What has the Russian response been to Turkey for shooting down the pilot? Now, let's recap of what happened now that everybody's pretty much filled in on the situation. An Su-24 was flying along. Now, Turkey has expanded its borders about 5 miles, so keep that in mind. So, refuted airspace of where Syrian territory is and where Turkish territory is in dispute, so this could be a part of it. The Turks are saying that the Su-24 reached its airspace for 17 seconds. They held them 10 times, and when they didn't respond whatsoever, they missiles away from an F-16, which would probably be an F-16C, which is the state-of-the-art, an excellent airplane to begin with, which an Su-24... would basically is a bomber. It's a strike bomber. You know, it's a medium size. Well, not even quite medium size. It's what you would call a light bomber. You know, for today's fighter bomber is kind of what it is. So it's not really going to have any. There's no way it's ever going to maneuver with an F-16. So that's the Turkish claim, and they said they shot it down after hailing it. Now, the Russian pilots, when they got shot down, 2 of them coming down in parachutes. Now, there's 2 videos out there. There's one parachute video where you see one guy in a red parachute, which I think is from a couple of weeks ago. And then there's another video that just came out with 2 pilots coming down in white parachutes. And, of course, the Durkas are on the ground going, Allahu Akbar, shooting at them with the AKs. One guy was killed before he hit the ground. The other guy, magically enough, even though... one rescue helicopter. I don't know what the fate of that crew is, but there was a helicopter. Maybe it was a rescue helicopter, but there was a helicopter sitting on the ground that got took out clearly by a U.S. TOW missile, and the pilot somehow was rescued by the Syrian army. So now the pilot says, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good to go." There's going to be payback, not so direct words, but yeah, somebody will pay, I think his exact words were, somebody's going to pay for the loss of my comrade. So, yeah. He said, again, this is the he said, she said kind of thing. He said they were flying along well inside the Syrian territory. He had flown there several times. He knew he didn't even need the navigation system. He knew the area so well. And he said he'd flown there several times. They didn't have their, I guess he didn't have his early warning system on. And he says that the missile hit unexpectedly at the rear. So he said they didn't have a chance to maneuver or nothing. So I guess that's going to change the protocols. They're going to, because they also fly with their transponders off, so it's harder to find out where these airplanes are going. But to an F-16, they're going to know where it's going. They're just not going to know what it is until they go. Now, there is a possibility that the Turks may have shot this down thinking it was a Syrian fighter. Because if its transponders off, you'd know there's an aircraft there, but you would not be able to identify it. If the transponder's off, it doesn't tell you what's flying around. There's an object flying in the sky. Is it a balloon? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it an Su-24? or a MiG-21 or a MiG-23, a Syrian MiG-23. Perhaps they could have saw at that distance too. You wouldn't be able to distinguish if it was a MiG-23 or an Su-24. You would just say there's something streaking across the sky. So maybe the Turks shot it down thinking that. Who knows? We'll just, that's just speculation, but you get the idea. So the Russian pilots said they were on a regular bombing run. Area they've been, they said there was nobody hailed them, nobody said anything. It just banged. They got hit by the missile. And he says they didn't give us any warnings. He says they weren't flying parallel to us. They weren't changing their course. They weren't doing anything to kind of like shoo us away, so to speak. But we've also known in the past couple of weeks, there's been a few incidents where Russian airplanes have been chased away by Turkish airplanes. So no one's ever going to know. Again, the first casualty of war is always the truth. There's three sides to the truth. There's their side, your side, and then of course there's the truth, right? So we're never going to know who's telling the truth. So, and that doesn't really matter. That never matters. You don't focus on trying that anyway, because the incident is done now. What is the reaction to it? That's what these videos are about. What is the reaction going to be? Well, Russia is not going to respond openly to this. Remember, the bigger prize for them is to watch the U.S. economy collapse and NATO fall apart. They're going to sacrifice a few pilots to allow this to happen. In other words, they're going to turn the other cheek on a lot of things. Now, we do have Francois Hollande sitting down with Putin, trying to work out some deals on airstrikes and stuff like that. But we need to go back and talk about why Turkey what motive could they possibly have had to shoot down a Russian airplane? Well, if we really look at it, maybe two that we don't know for sure, but we do know that there is a claim that a MiG-29 was shot down a couple of weeks ago. But nobody's been able to verify that. There's another claim or footage that still doesn't fully prove that a Russian helicopter was downed by some, Turkish fighters on the border with a U.S.-made TOW missile. There's video footage, but there's no 100% confirmation that, yeah, they took out a Hind-24. So this would be the third airplane that Russia has lost over there. But the way it sounds, according to the Russians, this is the first airplane they've lost there. So it's hard to say, right? Again, the Russians are probably not going to report the losses unless they have to, because again, the narrative is to make Russia look good, right? So there's going to be a lot. The game's dirty, right? But ISIS, has been selling oil to Turkey and other countries such as UK and whatever, selling that oil to Turkey, and that's how they fund one way they fund the ISIS operation, right? So that's how they bankroll it. So in 2 years, the United States and other coalition forces have basically blown up about 150 oil tankers, trucks, right? Russia in the past couple of weeks has destroyed over 1,000, almost 1,100. So they're really hurting. It means the Islamic State has all this oil they can't move. So with that said, that's going to hit them. Russia's going after the financing, right? So Turkey has warned Russia a couple of times, don't do that. So this is why Putin was out there saying that they got stabbed in the back by Turkey, and that this is one of the state sponsors of terrorism. And they got stabbed back on them when they were supposed to be working together, not necessarily working together, but working within the framework